Hi everyone, let's get started. Thanks a lot for joining today. Today we are going to go through a webcast of Managing WIP. That's WIP not with a H. I'm going to go through the what is WIP, why and how we manage WIP, and really try to focus on why WIP is so important when you're running a team and want to deliver at pace and lots of good value. So let's jump straight in. Let's go into what is WIP. Um, Really straightforward. Let's just tell you what it is. It's work in progress. If you didn't know that, I'm surprised you're even watching this webinar now or join the session because work in progress is what we're going to look at. Let's have a look to what we mean by work in progress is not to be confused with the following things. It's not work delivered. So if it's been delivered, it's not in progress, it's been delivered. And it's not even a prediction of what's going to be delivered. We're just talking about the stuff that's in progress. I've been on plenty of teams where things have been in progress where we thought it was going to get delivered but didn't. But I've also been on teams where they do get delivered. So it's not a guarantee it's going to get delivered. It also isn't any measure of the value being created. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're creating value. So let's not mix those up as well. And finally, what WIP is not a sign of efficiency. Because you are busy does not mean you are efficient. Just because someone's got some downtime does not mean they are not efficient. It actually isn't quite important to have downtime as well as being working effectively. So those are the things it isn't. And so what we really want to focus on and why WIP is so important, this is the cat out of the bag straight from the beginning. WIP or activity is no measure of success. And you can go away and Google that. Is activity a measure of success? And there's loads and loads and loads of things from Harvard and all sorts of places saying it is definitely no measure of success. However, while it might not be a measure, it is a lever. You can control, if you're a leader on a team or even if you're an individual working on the team, you can control the amount of work in progress you have. So we're going to really delve into why it's so important to be able to manage that WIP, whether it's an individual or you're a lead of a team. And you can do that a lot more effectively if you know some of the tricks which we're going to go through. So let's jump in. Let's go a little bit further. Let's go in and have a look at the 3 reasons why WIP needs to be managed. So while I've talked about it, it is one of the things you can be managed. Let's have a look at some of the reasons why it needs to be managed. What's the impact of not having managed WIP? So number one reason why it needs to be managed is this one, the Goldilocks principle. Now, if you're not familiar with the Goldilocks principle, I have just taken this straight from the web, from Quiver Management. To motivate the team, you really need, so really I'm speaking to the leaders now, but it's really for yourself as well. You don't want too much work. You don't want too little work. You want what's just right. And if you're in a system where work is pushed upon you, or even if you're pulling and it's not available, or you're pulling and it's overwhelmed, the to-do queue is overwhelming, it can be too much one way or the other. So you're really trying to get that just right all of the time. And that's really important for the motivation of the team. Too hot, too cold, you're turning the team off basically. So number one principle of why you want to be managing WIP is people like things just right. We do. I do. Also, let's not fall for this. Often when I do these and I take questions sometimes as I go through this, people will say, yeah, but we need more than one thing to keep us busy, just in case there's downtime on one, move to the. Absolutely, have more things in the backlog ready to go. But you can't actually multitask. You'd have some people say, well, I multitask. I do 3 things at once. You don't. You do one thing, then you stop one thing and move to the next thing. You can't actually multitask. You might have the meat and veg on your plate, but you're not eating both at the same time. You're having one, then the other, or you're putting them together and having half the amounts. You can't multitask. It's not possible. All right, number two thing. Number two reason why WIP needs to be managed is this principle. I get a little bit scientific here. I don't want to do this just on my subjective opinions and what I've experienced, but there is actually an objective thing you can look at, and it's I put this small because I don't expect anyone to understand or to read it necessarily in this short amount of time. Little's law. Again, you can look on Wikipedia. There's formulas and stuff, but what it's really doing is this chart I'm going to show you now, and it's really important that this is understood. You probably recognise this because you can't understand why this is the case, but as work increases, it exponentially increases the wait time. So if you add, this graph is that law visualized. If you add 10% more work to a team, it will double the wait time for any one of those items to get finished. So let's say that normally you've got a 1 week turnaround time on a piece of work and they are at 50% capacity. So they've got 50% spare, 50% capacity, and that spare time is used to fill the gaps, etc. When you go up to 60%, that 1 week wait time will go to 2 weeks. It doubles. So that incremental load really does push those timelines out. So the sweet spot generally is before there's the big peak. So you're looking around 60, 70%. If you can get your team 60, 70% of their full capacity, so their full capacity is 100%, but if you want things to turn around quick and you want them to be available to answer questions, you want them to be able to do those other things and to adapt to change, you want to be in the 60 to 70% range of work of capacity, not work in progress, of resource utilization, that is. So you don't want too much work in progress, because when you put more and more work in progress, you fill all those gaps with other work that's not that top priority, and that starts to push them into these really long wait times. So things start to really slow down. And we're going to delve a little bit into that in number 3. So Little's law and the resource utilization laws. This is an introduction to WIP. I'll do webinars on those as well. Is number 2 reason why you need to manage that WIP. You don't want them to be up in the 80, 90, 100% utilized. You don't want your teams to be doing that. You don't want to be doing that yourself. So number 2, the more demand, the more work in progress you have, the slower your response times are, the slower things are delivered. And number 3, why WIP needs to be managed, is a very similar one. We're going to do a little exercise now. So it's going to slow down just for a second. I'm going to go through this. So you've got a ute and you've got some boxes that need to be delivered. The ute, for those who are not from Australia, by the way, a ute is this utility vehicle. It's very popular in Australia. The ute can technically fit a lot on the back, right? But with 6 big boxes, 12 small boxes, it can only go 20 kilometers an hour. It's too heavy. It has to slow down. But with half of that, 3 boxes and 6 boxes, it goes 60 kilometers an hour. And with 1 big box and 6 small boxes, it can travel at its max speed at 80 kilometers an hour. So that representation there of how things can be delivered is the same in a team and same with individuals. This is Little's law in action, really. So you've got to pick and find where that sweet spot is. So because this is a webinar, I'm not going to stop the video for a second. I'll let you go off. You pause it if you're watching it. Go off and try and work this one out. How would you load that ute up? Would you load it with 6 boxes and 12, or 3 and 6, or 1 and 6? Hopefully you've had a couple of minutes just to think about that. So what is the impact of not managing load? Well, if you didn't manage load, we just fill it up with 6 boxes and 12, and you go 20 kilometers an hour, and yeah, it would get there, but it would be 4 times slower than if we just did 1 box. But then if you're just doing 1 box, you've only got a sixth of the stuff, so you don't want to do 1 box. They're just right. The Goldilocks principle's in the middle. With 3 boxes and 3 small boxes, 3 big ones, travel 60 kilometers an hour, it's the best speed. Now that needs managing. If you're overwhelmed with work, you're going to go with the 6. If it doesn't look like you're busy, you're going to go with the 1. You've got to know what the backlog looks like. You've got to know what's coming up, and you've got to manage your work in progress to be able to get the maximum efficiency of yourself and your team. So number 3 reason is the pace and output is directly impacted by work in progress. So if you can manage your work in progress, you are effectively, but indirectly but directly, managing the pace and the output of yourself and your team. But you have to manage your WIP. You can't manage the pace. You can't manage the output. They're sort of set. You can work a little bit harder. You can work slightly longer hours, but they're not sustainable. WIP is the biggest lever you can pull. Let's have a look at some of the steps. So already you're probably already thinking about this. So what can I do? Hopefully you've been convinced that WIP is something that's worth managing. Actually, to manage it, they're all those simple processes that are in most of the frameworks that you pick up now off the shelf. But I'm just going to go through 3 things that I think you should definitely be doing. And you can drop one, but then you're probably not going to hit the mark. So try all 3. Try and get all 3 right. They're all very simple. It's to visualize, to measure, and to review. So number 1, to visualize. What I mean by visualize is use something to represent the work that you're doing. All the work that you do in your team, it's all different. So use cards and use boards. That's the outcome that we're trying to achieve. These are the 3 outcomes that we're trying to achieve. Use a Kanban board to put the main card in the middle. So that's the one we're working on, guys. Forget about those others. We want visibility that they're coming, but we're going to focus on that one. Visualize that. Make sure everyone's always got clarity on what's happening. What's important here is that we've all used these systems. This is why I mentioned these are the systems. Put the objectives up, the epics, the key results, the increments, what the goals are. I put tasks maybe. In some teams, you've got a mixture of seniorities and, well, by seniority, I mean experience. You might want to put tasks on there. Everybody wants to feel like they're up there. So some of the more junior guys still very task orientated. We try to coach that out of people, but you might want to put tasks up there. What you definitely don't want to do is measure tasks unless you're doing some sort of performance management. But I wouldn't even then. So measure what matters. What matters is outcomes. So how many outcomes are we delivering? How long does it take? And try and find the trends of where the delays are. That's how you can improve. So how much have we delivered? Not how many tasks have we completed, but how many key results have we hit? How many increments have we delivered? When we broke it down and delivered things incrementally, how many objectives have we delivered? How long did it take to get an objective? How long did we wait for the objective? What was the delays? You want to watch the webinar on cumulative flow diagrams and velocities. We'll talk about why those are so important. But with all of this, we can really improve. Big warning here. Do not measure, or I would recommend you don't measure the activity. How long does it take to finish a task is not of no consequence. No consequence whatsoever. How long does it take to achieve the objective when it's tested? Because what you do if you, let's say you're talking about a digital team that does test, build, test, build. If you're counting on how long it takes to do a test and a build, the build will just speed up. They'll just do it as fast as they can. And then you just go round and round and round because they're not putting the quality in. It's the overall outcome you want to be measuring. Final one, review. So the review, this means getting the right people together once, doing it right, doing it once. Meet on cadence. That way you know people are definitely going to be there. Don't do it with people who don't need to be there. Get the people who need to be there. Think about the meeting size. Get it working. This might go behind me. I thought it might do. The last one's visualizing, but we've already got that one over there. So when you are doing a review, make sure you've got a purpose of the meeting. Make sure it's on cadence. Make sure the meeting's working. Make sure you review your work in progress on a regular basis. Hopefully you're looking to get things finished so it's worthwhile reviewing. So you got done stuff. The visualization I talked about. Make sure you can see the work. See the outputs. If you're building APIs, that's difficult. If you're building web pages, it's easy. Somewhere in between, sometimes it's not easy, but you can always show the objectives and the key results, or the epics and the features, whatever system it is you're using, on a board. You can always show that. It's much better. Okay, I'm going to wrap up now. Let's wrap up that content. Let's go through. So we're talking about work in progress now. We're talking about managing work in progress. Don't confuse it for activity. Activity is no measure of success. That is the key takeaway, is that work in progress is not a measure of success. However, it's a very good thing to manage because your measure of success will be based on whether you can be able to manage your work in progress. The three things that you want to think about, I put these images behind me. There's Goldilocks hiding behind me. The Goldilocks principle needs attention to get things just right. You have to manage this to get this right. Nobody works well if there's too much or too little. Speaking of Little's law demonstrates that the greater the load is exponentially greater the wait time. The graph's behind me. Remember, it goes up suddenly. When you start getting close to full capacity, you have to slow down because you're constantly context switching and moving between other things. This is a scientific law. It's there. Go Google it. Have a look. As I've already got to, you can't manage the speed of the team. You can't manage how fast they work. You can't manage how hard they work. You can't manage those things. You just can't. What you can do is you can manage the load that's on them, and you can track one or two things really, really easily. If you manage that load on your team, or if you manage your own load and you focus on priorities, you'll get a lot more through a lot quicker. Trust me. Finally, we'll go on to what steps you can do to get better at managing your WIP. We've talked about this. We can visualize, we can measure, we can review. They're just 3 steps. There are other things. I'm trying to keep this simple for this introduction. Visualization, you really want to use cards. I love OKRs, use epics, features, whatever, but use cards and put them on a board. Don't use documents, don't use Excel, use the same things the whole time so the whole team gets used to it. Cards on a board that represent all of the work, objectives, everything. There's a whole range of material we're going to do on this. Measure. Look, if you're a fan of the Agile Manifesto, the only measure of success is things delivered. But there are other parts of the manifesto that say things about delivering quickly and frequently. So really the measures of success in a delivery team are what's been delivered. Is it value? Has it been done quickly? And value is something I kind of stay away from because there's no really very good measure of it, but it is an incredibly important thing. But you get the value by constantly iterating and measuring how successful it is. Finally, if you really, really want to get manage your WIP, you've got to constantly be looking at it. So do purposeful sessions, have a look at what's in progress, make sure you're prioritizing, make sure the right people are on there. If you want the right people there consistently, get a cadence working. Again, all topics for future webinars. I'd love to go through some of this in a lot more detail, but this was just about work in progress, how you can manage work in progress, and how hopefully you can understand the reasons why you want to manage work in progress, and how some of those steps that you can take to really make it work for you. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Or for those who are on the webinar, I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you very much.